Just stay back. Stay right there. Joran edged deeper into his own cargo hold, repurposed medical scanner held like a weapon it definitely was. The air hummed, thick with an ozone tang, and something else, something sweet and electric, like ion-charged fruit. Coiled around the primary power conduit feeding the aft stabilizers, looking disturbingly comfortable, was the source of the disturbance. And the smell. Her skin, if you could call it that, was a mesmerizing swirl of deep indigo and violet scales that seemed to flow like liquid light. Bioluminescent traceries, emerald and gold, pulsed rhythmically beneath the surface, shifting in slow, hypnotic patterns. A tail, thick at the base and tapering to a wickedly sharp-looking barb, twitched lazily, brushing against the metal casing of the conduit. Sparks, tiny and harmless, crackled where it touched. She wasn't large, maybe curled up she'd fit inside a standard cargo crate, but the presence of her filled the cramped space. Her head lifted, tilted. Eyes like molten gold, huge and lacking pupils, fixed on him. No, not fixed, they absorbed him. A low thrum vibrated through the deck plates, resonating in his teeth. It wasn't sound, exactly. It was pressure, a question, a warning. He didn't know. Right, he muttered, keeping the useless scanner aimed. Okay. Trespassing is a big no-no, especially on my rust bucket. How the hell did you get in here? The thrumming intensified, the lights on her skin brightening, shifting faster. Gold eyes blinked, slow and deliberate. A three-fingered hand, scales shimmering like oil on water, lifted from the conduit. She tapped a long, claw-tipped finger against her own temple. Then hesitantly she pointed at him. You. The word wasn't spoken. It bloomed in his mind, clear as a bell, startling him into taking a step back. He bumped into a stack of nutrient-paced crates. Telepathy? Great, just fragging great. He lowered the scanner slightly. Look, lady, creature, whatever, you can't just hook yourself up to my ship's power core. It's temperamental and probably not good for whatever you are. Her head tilted again, a gesture that was unnervingly feline. The golden eyes narrowed slightly. The thrum softened, becoming inquisitive. Need, warmth, resonance. Another mental nudge, less a word, more a feeling, an echo of cold, of running, of deep, gnawing emptiness. He frowned. Need, you needed a recharge. You picked a hell of a place, sister. He gestured around the messy hold. This is the interstellar equivalent of a dumpster. The traceries on her skin swirled faster, amusement flickering in the emerald pulses. Safe, hidden, resonant. Her gaze flickered back to the conduit, then to him. A soft, inquisitive chirp finally escaped her lips, a sound like struck crystal. She uncoiled slightly, fluid and silent, revealing more of her form. Sleek, almost serpentine from the waist down, more humanoid above, though unsettlingly slender. Small fins, delicate and translucent, flared along her forearms. The tail gave another lazy flick, brushing dangerously close to an exposed wire bundle. Hey, watch the tail, Joran snapped, then sighed. This was ridiculous. Okay, look, you're unexpected. Let's start simple. Who are you? What are you running from? She pushed away from the conduit, the low hum fading slightly as she broke contact. She moved towards him, silent as smoke, her golden eyes holding his. He automatically tensed, raising the scanner again. She stopped a few feet away. The sweet, electric scent intensified. Lyra. The name blossomed in his mind, softer this time, tentative. Need comfort. Her hand lifted again, palm up, fingers slightly curled. An invitation. A demand. The lights on her skin pulsed a soft, warm amber. He stared at her hand, then back at those consuming golden eyes. Comfort. What the hell did that mean to a creature plugged into a ship's engine? His instincts screamed trap or trick, but the raw vulnerability shimmering beneath the strange request tugged at something he kept buried deep. She needed something. And somehow, impossibly, she'd ended up in his hold, asking him. Against all common sense, he felt a flicker of something. Curiosity, pity, definitely trouble. Joran didn't lower the scanner, but he didn't back away either. Her hand remained outstretched, palm up, shimmering faintly. The air thickened with her strange, intoxicating scent. Comfort. The thought echoed again, tinged with a fragile hope that felt dangerously genuine. Comfort, he repeated flatly. Right, and how exactly does one comfort a Lyra? He waved the scanner vaguely at her form. Does it involve plugging you back into the main reactor? Because I'm really trying to avoid blowing a hole in my own ship. Her lips, thin and a shade darker than her indigo skin, curved in what might have been a smile. It didn't quite reach her enormous eyes. The thrumming started again, low and tentative, a physical vibration he felt more than heard. Touch. The single word resonated not just in his head, but along his skin, raising goosebumps. She took another fluid step closer, closing the distance until only arm's length separated them. He could see the intricate detail of her scales now, the way they overlapped like tiny, iridescent jewels. The fins on her forearms fluttered nervously. Touch, he swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. Look, Lyra, I don't know what species you are or where you're from, but generally touching strange aliens who sneak onto your ship ends badly, for one of us, usually me. Her head tilted, confusion swirling in the shifting lights on her skin, blues and greens pulsing uncertainly. Bad. Touch. Connects, shares warmth, grounds. She flexed her fingers, the movement hypnotic. You are resonant, solid, not cold. The implication hung in the air. Whatever she was running from, it was the opposite of warm and solid. It was cold, empty. He lowered the scanner fully, letting it hang by his side. His hand felt heavy, tingling. Part of him, the stupid, reckless part that always got him into trouble, wanted to reach out just to see what her skin felt like. Smooth, slick, warm, electric. Look, he tried again, aiming for firm but ending up somewhere near flustered. I appreciate the resonance feedback, but I'm not really the comforting type. I haul scrap, dodge patrols, and try not to starve. Emotional support isn't listed on my services brochure. He attempted a sarcastic smile. It felt weak. Lyra blinked slowly, those golden eyes seeming to drink in his flustered energy. A soft, musical sigh escaped her. Alone. You feel alone. The observation landed like a physical blow, sharp and unexpected. He stiffened. Don't do that. Do what? Her voice, when she spoke aloud, was a soft, melodic chime, surprisingly clear, though tinged with an accent he couldn't place. It sent shivers down his spine. The head-reading thing, stay out of my head. She frowned, the lights rippling across her brow. Not head, feel, like currents in the void, you leak. I leak. He stared at her, baffled and indignant. I am not leaking anything. Motion, strong, spiky. Underneath, soft, her hand twitched, yearning. He took an involuntary step back, needing space. Her proximity was overwhelming, her scent filling his lungs, her weird, empathic insight stripping him bare. She mirrored his step back, a flicker of something that looked like hurt or maybe fear crossing her features. The lights dimmed slightly. Okay, he said, scrubbing a hand over his face. Okay, new plan, you stay on your side of the hold, I stay on mine. No touching. No. Feeling my leaks. We figure out what's going on. Deal. Lyra watched him, her expression unreadable again. The thrumming was barely perceptible now. After a long moment, she gave a slow, deliberate nod. Deal. For now. But the way her golden eyes lingered on his hand, the way her tail gave a slow, sinuous curl against the deck plating, suggested for now might be a very flexible time frame. He had a sinking feeling he'd just agreed to something far more complicated than shared cargo space. He was alone, yes, but something told him he wasn't going to be for much longer, and the thought was equal parts terrifying and embarrassingly thrilling. The rust bucket suddenly felt a lot smaller. They existed in a state of uneasy truce for the next cycle. Joran tried to work, running diagnostics on the sputtering nav computer, sorting through a meager haul of salvaged sensor arrays from the debris field near Xylo's Prime. Lyra watched. She'd found a spot tucked between some thermal blankets and a crate of expired protein bars, curling into herself, the glow of her skin muted to a soft, ambient pulse. She didn't hum or try to plug back into anything, but her presence was a constant magnetic pull on his attention. Every time he moved, he felt her golden eyes track him. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the ship's groans and his occasional muttered curse at a stubborn piece of tech. It was worse than arguing. Finally, unable to stand it, he tossed a hydrospanner onto his workbench with a clatter. Okay, seriously, what are you? Lyra unfolded slightly, her movements fluid and deliberate. I am Lyra. Yeah, got that part. What is a Lyra? What species? Where'd you come from? Why stow away on a ship that looks like it lost a fight with an asteroid field? She considered his questions, her head tilted. The lights on her skin flickered soft blues of thought, flashes of green that might be memory. My kind are Cathar. The name felt strange on her tongue, ancient and resonant. From far, place is broken now. Broken. The mental echo was sharp with pain, images flashing behind his eyes, fire, shattering crystal structures, a sky choked with black smoke. He winced, shaking his head to clear it. Hey, warning before the psychic slideshow next time, okay? Lyra blinked, confusion swirling in her lights again. Share, you asked. I asked for words, not a full sensory download of your homeworld's apocalypse, he sighed, rubbing his temples. Okay, Cathar, got it. Place is broken. So you're a refugee, hunted. The correction was swift, cold. Fear spiked in her scent, sharp and metallic. They took others, chased me. Saw your ship, felt quiet, quiet. His ship was anything but. It rattled, whined, and occasionally made alarming bangs. But maybe compared to being hunted across star systems, it was quiet, relatively peaceful even. Hunted by who? K.R. Rull, she whispered the name, her tail twitching, the barbed tip scraping faintly on the deck. The lights on her skin flared a brief, angry red before settling back into nervous blues. Take, use, drain. Again, the feeling behind the words was stronger than the words themselves, a chilling sense of violation, of being treated as a resource, a battery. Joran leaned back against the workbench, crossing his arms. Slavers, then, or something worse. Dealing in exotic species was grimly profitable in the outer territories. A Cathar with her bioluminescence and apparent energy sensitivity would fetch a high price. So the KR Rull are after you. You jumped ship, ended up here. And now, Lyra looked at him, her golden eyes searching his face. Now stay with Joran. The question was hopeful, almost childlike, despite the clearly adult, undeniably attractive alien form it came from. He snorted. Stay. Lady, I can barely keep myself fed. I'm heading to Port Nowhere to offload this scrap. It's not exactly a haven, and sticking with me is probably the fastest way to get caught. You are fast. Ship is sturdy. She patted the bulkhead beside her gently. Resonant. He raised an eyebrow. Sturdy, resonant. It's held together with synthweld and hope. And Port Nowhere is crawling with the kind of scum who wouldn't hesitate to sell you to the highest bidder, K.R. Rull or otherwise. You would not sell Lyra. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, delivered with unnerving certainty. He opened his mouth to argue, to tell her she didn't know him, that everyone had a price, but the words died on his lips. Because she was right. Damn it, he wouldn't. Selling sentient beings wasn't his brand of scumbaggery. Smuggling, maybe. Ignoring docking fees, definitely, but not that. No, he admitted grudgingly. I wouldn't. A warm pulse of light, pure gold, flowed across her skin. Relief, gratitude. It washed over him, surprisingly pleasant. Good. She unfolded further, rising to her feet in one smooth motion. She was taller than he'd realized, easily matching his height. She took a step towards him, then seemed to remember their agreement, stopping herself. So, she said, her voice a soft chime. Port Nowhere, dangerous place. The armpit of the sector, he confirmed. Why do you think they call it Port Nowhere? We will be careful. She offered another tentative smile. Together. The together sent a complicated jolt through him. Part dread, part something else. Something annoyingly warm. Yeah, he muttered, turning back to his diagnostics, needing the distraction. Careful, right. But he could still feel her eyes on him, feel the low, persistent thrum of her presence, a silent question hanging in the shared, cramped space of his ship. Careful wasn't usually his style, and somehow he doubted it was hers either. The journey to Port Nowhere was tense. Not because of external threats, the patch of void they traversed was mercifully empty, but because of the internal ones. Lyra seemed to have interpreted his grudging agreement not to sell her as some kind of pact. She still respected the no-touching rule mostly, but her proximity increased. She'd sit near him in the cramped cockpit while he piloted, her golden eyes tracking the star charts or his hands on the controls. The sweet, electric scent of her became a permanent fixture in the recycled air, messing with his concentration in ways he refused to acknowledge. Her attempts at conversation were unique. She'd ask questions about the ship, about human customs, about the strange synth-protein bars he ate. Her grasp of galactic standard was improving rapidly, but she still relied heavily on emotional projection and those disconcerting mental flashes. Trying to explain sarcasm to her was an exercise in utter futility. It usually ended with her tilting her head, lights swirling in confusion, and projecting a wave of bewildered curiosity that made his teeth ache. The teasing started subtly. A comment about the spiky colors of his frustration when the nav computer glitched. A soft chirp of amusement when he tripped over a loose power coupling. Then it escalated. She discovered his stash of cheap Aldebaran whiskey. He found her sniffing the bottle, her lights pulsing a curious rainbow pattern. "Smells sharp. Burns?" she asked, looking up at him, eyes wide. "Yeah, it burns," he grunted, snatching the bottle back. "And it's mine." She made a soft humming sound, amusement flickering in her gaze. "You hide things, small secrets, like buried sparks." He scowled. Everyone needs secrets, especially from psychic aliens who leak other people's leaks. That earned him a melodic giggle, a sound that did funny things to his insides. Joran is leaky and sparky. Later, while he was trying to patch a minor hull breach sealant leak near the galley recycler, she drifted closer, ostensibly watching. He was crammed half under a console, grumbling. "Need tool," she offered, pointing a slender finger towards his kit. "No, I need this whole damn ship to stop falling apart," he snapped, whacking his knuckles against a pipe. Pain flared, followed by a string of curses. Lyra knelt beside him, her presence suddenly very close. Before he could protest, her cool, smooth fingers brushed against his scraped knuckles. A faint blue light glowed from her fingertips, and a soothing coolness seeped into his skin, easing the sting almost instantly. The contact sent a jolt, completely unexpected, through his system. He jerked his hand back as if burned. "What the? Hey, no touching." Her hand hovered, the blue light fading. Her golden eyes held a mixture of surprise and something else. "Hurt? Soothe. You were pain-colored." "I don't need soothing," he growled, though the throbbing in his knuckles was definitely gone. "And I definitely don't need bioelectric first aid." He scrambled out from under the console, putting distance between them. Her lights dimmed, swirling with muted blues and purples. "My apologies, Joran." Instinct. She looked down at her own hand, flexing her fingers. "We share relief." He rubbed his knuckles, feeling foolish and flustered. The brief touch had been nice, too nice. It felt intimate in a way that went beyond simple first aid. It felt like connection, the very thing he was trying desperately to avoid. "Just ask next time, okay?" he muttered, unable to meet her gaze. "Ask," she echoed softly, the thought tinged with understanding. But the air between them had shifted. The playful teasing now carried an undercurrent of something deeper, a restrained desire that hummed just beneath the surface, much like the vibrations he sometimes felt from her. He caught her watching him more often, her golden eyes lingering, her lights pulsing in slow, warm patterns. He found himself watching her too, the fluid grace of her movements, the mesmerizing dance of light beneath her scales. Port Nowhere was getting closer. And the tension inside the rusty bolt was becoming more dangerous than any asteroid field. Port Nowhere lived up to its name. A sprawling, chaotic asteroid station built into a hollowed-out moonlet, it festered in a forgotten corner of the sector, lit by sputtering neon signs advertising cheap synthale, dubious cybernetics, and entertainment Joran didn't want to contemplate. Gravity was inconsistent. The air smelled like stale sweat and burnt circuitry, and every other person looked like they'd mug you for your boots. Perfect. "Stay close," Joran muttered, pulling the hood of his worn jacket further over his head. He'd given Lyra a long, shapeless cloak he'd found buried in a locker, hoping it would be enough to hide her more exotic features. It mostly worked, shrouding her form, though the hood couldn't entirely conceal the faint, ambient glow emanating from within or the occasional twitch of her hidden tail. Loud, crowded, many sharp edges. Her unease vibrated against his senses, a low thrum of anxiety. He could feel eyes on them already, drawn by the unusual pairing, a rough-looking human scavenger and a figure hidden entirely in shadow. "Just keep moving. We offload the scrap, get credits, buy supplies, and get out. Minimal interaction." Easier said than done. The scrap dealer, a hulking four-armed Bracian named Grok, took one look at the meager sensor arrays and offered half their worth. The haggling was loud and punctuated by Grok slamming meaty fists on his counter. Lyra shifted beside Joran, her hand instinctively moving towards his arm. He intercepted it, gripping her wrist gently but firmly under the cloak. Easy, he thought, hoping she could pick it up. "Let me handle this." He felt a flicker of surprise from her, then compliance. Her hand relaxed in his grip. He focused back on Grok. "Look, you gelatinous cheapskate, those are Class 3 military-grade arrays. Slightly used, sure, but the core tech is solid. 70% or we walk." Grok rumbled, his multiple eyes swiveling between Joran and the cloaked figure beside him. "Feeling brave today, scavenger. Got yourself some backup." His gaze lingered on Lyra, greedy speculation in his eyes. Joran tightened his grip on Lyra's wrist, feeling the fine trembling in her fingers. "She's just along for the ride. 70% Grok, final offer." Just then, a commotion erupted further down the crowded concourse. Shouts, the clang of metal, the distinctive whine of stunned batons. "KR Patrol," someone yelled. Panic rippled through the crowd, people scrambled, pushing and shoving. Joran felt Lyra stiffen beside him, a spike of pure terror hitting him like ice water. "They are here." Grok's greed vanished, replaced by self-preservation. "Take 60, get out." He shoved the credit chip across the counter. Joran snatched it without counting. "Come on." He pulled Lyra, turning to push through the surging bodies, heading for the nearest dimly lit side alley. Figures in dark gray environmental suits, faces obscured by visors, were moving methodically through the crowd, scanning faces, grabbing anyone who resisted. KR. They moved with chilling efficiency. Lyra stumbled, hampered by the cloak. Joran kept a firm hold on her, pulling her along. "This way." Her thought was urgent, directing him towards a narrow gap between two dilapidated market stalls. They squeezed through, finding themselves in a maze of garbage-choked service tunnels. The air was thick with rot and dampness. Distantly, they could hear the sounds of the patrol fatting. Joran leaned against a grimy wall, catching his breath. Lyra sagged beside him, pulling back her hood. Her face was pale beneath the indigo scales, her lights flickering erratically like a failing bulb. Her breath came in ragged gasps. "Close, too close." "Yeah," Joran panted. "Way too close. How did they know we were here? They hunt. Always hunt." She pressed a hand to her chest, her golden eyes wide with remembered fear. The terror rolling off her was palpable, making his own skin crawl. He reached out instinctively, placing a hand on her shoulder. The contact was electric. Her lights flared, a wave of warmth spreading from his touch point across her skin. She looked up at him, startled. He didn't pull away this time. The shared danger, the adrenaline, the raw fear radiating from her, it shattered his carefully constructed walls. "Hey," he said softly, his voice rough. "It's okay. We lost them, you're safe." She leaned into his touch, a soft, shuddering sigh escaping her. The erratic flickering of her lights began to stabilize, settling into a warmer, steadier pulse. "Joran." Her voice was barely a whisper, thick with emotion. She didn't say thank you. She didn't need to. The wave of relief, gratitude, and something intensely vulnerable washed over him from her, a current far stronger than any word. He kept his hand on her shoulder, a solid point of contact in the grimy darkness. The chase, the fear, it had stripped away the banter and the cautious distance, leaving something raw and immediate in its place. It wasn't comfort, not exactly. It was grounding. A shared moment of intense release, not sexual but profoundly intimate nonetheless. They were alive. They were together. And in the shadows of Port Nowhere, that felt like everything. They needed a place to lay low. The KRL patrol meant staying on the rusty bolt docked at the main port was suicide. Joran used a chunk of their newly acquired credits to bribe a docking bay attendant in the station's underbelly, a section known colloquially as the sump, for access to a decommissioned storage unit. It wasn't much, damp and smelling faintly of mildew and forgotten chemicals, but it was off the main grids and relatively secure. Lyra explored the small space cautiously, her tail trailing patterns in the dust, her lights casting shifting shadows on the stained metal walls. She seemed calmer now, the immediate terror having subsided, replaced by a quiet watchfulness. Joran dumped their meager supplies, water packs, nutrient bars, a medkit, onto a rusted shelf. "We stay here until things cool down," he said, stripping off his jacket. "Maybe a day or two. Then we figure out how to get off this rock without attracting another welcoming committee." Lyra nodded, curling up on a pile of discarded insulation foam in one corner. She drew the cloak back around herself, though the hood remained down. The ambient glow from her skin provided the only light in the dim unit. Silence settled again, but it felt different this time. Less tense, more charged. The adrenaline rush had faded, leaving behind a heightened awareness of each other. He could feel her gaze on him as he checked the unit's seals, pretending to be busy. Joran. Her mental voice was soft, hesitant. He turned. She was watching him, her golden eyes luminous in the gloom. Why help Lyra? He paused, leaning against the wall. He scrubbed a hand over his jaw, stubbled and rough. Because leaving you to those KRL bastards wasn't an option. Could have left, saved yourself. Easy, safer. He shrugged, uncomfortable with the intensity of her gaze. Maybe. Wasn't going to happen. Why? She persisted, the single word echoing with genuine curiosity. Why had he barely knew her. She was trouble, an alien refugee who communicated through feelings and glowed in the dark. Sticking his neck out for her was illogical, dangerous. Yet the thought of abandoning her to the KRL had felt wrong, viscerally wrong. Because, he struggled for the words. Because nobody deserves that. To be hunted like an animal, treated like fuel. He remembered the feeling she'd projected. Take, use, drain. It made his stomach churn. Lyra absorbed his answer, her lights pulsing a soft, warm amber. She unfolded slightly, reaching a hand towards him, palm up, echoing her first gesture back in his cargo hold. Comfort, she projected, but the meaning felt different now. Deeper. Not just a need for warmth, but an offering. A recognition of shared vulnerability, shared humanity, or whatever the Cathar equivalent was. He looked at her hand, then into her searching eyes. The no-touching rule felt flimsy now, irrelevant after the alley chase, after the shared fear and relief. He hesitated for only a second before stepping closer, taking her offered hand. Her skin was cool and incredibly smooth, like polished obsidian, but a subtle warmth pulsed beneath the surface, sinking with the lights. A faint tingle spread up his arm, not unpleasant, just aware. Her fingers curled around his, surprisingly strong. The contact seemed to amplify the connection between them, the low, thrumming vibration returning, resonating through his bones. It wasn't just physical contact. It felt like plugging into her directly, feeling the steady rhythm of her energy, the quiet strength beneath the surface fear. Good, she breathed, her eyes fluttering, closed for a moment. The amber light intensified, bathing the small space in a warm glow. Connects. He didn't pull away, didn't want to. Standing there in the dim, mildew-scented storage unit, holding the hand of a glowing alien fugitive, felt strangely right. Grounding. Needed. He squeezed her fingers gently. Yeah, he murmured. Connects. Her eyes opened, locking with his. The playful curiosity was gone, replaced by something ancient and profound. A flicker of heat sparked between them, unexpected and potent. Her thumb traced a pattern on the back of his hand, sending shivers down his spine. The air grew thick, charged with unspoken energy, her scent intensifying, mingling with the dust and decay. This wasn't just comfort anymore. It was something else entirely. Something dangerous, seductive, and utterly inevitable. The boundaries they'd carefully maintained were dissolving, washed away by adrenaline and the undeniable pull between them. He was falling, and he didn't even try to stop himself. The air in the storage unit crackled with unspoken tension. Joran's heart hammered against his ribs, a counterpoint to the low thrum emanating from Lyra. Her thumb continued its slow exploration of his hand, each touch sending sparks along his nerves. Her golden eyes held his, wide and searching, reflecting the dim amber light pulsing from her skin. He could feel the question in her gaze, feel it resonating through their joined hands. A question of intent, of desire. His own answer was a confusing mess of fear and fascination, but the wanting was sharp, undeniable. He leaned closer, drawn by the strange gravity she exerted. Her scent filled his senses, ozone, electric fruit, and something uniquely her, intoxicating and wild. Her lips parted slightly, revealing the faint bioluminescent sheen even there. He could feel the warmth radiating from her body, see the intricate dance of emerald and gold beneath her indigo scales. Lyra, he whispered, the name feeling thick on his tongue. Her lights pulsed faster, warmer. Gold and amber chased each other across her shoulders and down her arms. Joran. Her mental voice was a sigh laced with an anticipation that mirrored his own. She swayed towards him, breaking the last few inches of distance. Her free hand rose, cool fingers tracing the line of his jaw, sending shivers down his spine. The touch was feather-light, hesitant yet deliberate, exploring, learning. He didn't flinch, didn't pull back. He closed his eyes, surrendering to the sensation, to the moment. Her touch felt like static electricity and cool silk, alien yet profoundly intimate. He could feel the faint vibration of her energy through her fingertips, a silent communication passing between them. When he opened his eyes again, her face was inches from his. Those vast golden eyes seemed to see straight through his defenses, into the lonely, guarded core of him. He saw no judgment there, only curiosity and a dawning, reciprocal desire. Want, the thought bloomed between them, raw and simple, shared. His hand tightened on hers. His other hand came up, mirroring her gesture, fingers brushing against the smooth, cool scales of her cheek. She leaned into his touch, a soft, crystalline sound escaping her throat, not quite a gasp, not quite a sigh. The lights on her skin flared brilliantly, bathing them both in a warm, golden radiance. He lowered his head, his lips hovering scant millimeters from hers. He could feel her breath, cool against his skin. The thrumming intensified, vibrating through his entire body now, a deep, resonant hum that seemed to call to something primal within him. Connect, she urged, the thought a blend of plea and command. He didn't need further encouragement. He closed the distance, capturing her lips with his. The sensation was electric, literally. A tiny shock, pleasant and surprising, jolted through him as their mouths met. Her lips were soft, yielding, yet held an undercurrent of alien firmness. She responded with an eagerness that stole his breath, her hand tightening on his, her other hand sliding around his neck, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, shifting from tentative exploration to hungry demand. It was unlike any kiss he'd ever experienced. There was the physical sensation, yes, but overlaid with a powerful sensory exchange. He tasted ozone and something sweet, felt the faint vibration of her energy against his lips, sensed flashes of her emotions, curiosity, pleasure, a startling undercurrent of possessive intensity. He slid his hand from her cheek down the smooth column of her throat, feeling the intricate pattern of her scales, the steady pulse beneath. Her tail coiled instinctively around his leg, the scaled hide surprisingly strong, anchoring him to her. She made a low sound deep in her throat, a purr-like vibration that resonated against his chest. He broke the kiss, gasping for air, resting his forehead against hers. Her lights pulsed erratically, a chaotic symphony of gold, amber, and flashes of hot pink. Her skin felt warm now, radiating heat. More she projected, the thought sharp with need. He met her gaze, seeing his own ragged desire reflected in her molten gold eyes. The fear was still there, a small knot in his gut warning him this was reckless, insane, crossing a line he couldn't uncross. But the pull towards her, the sheer magnetic intensity of their connection overwhelmed everything else. He lowered his head again, seeking her mouth, her touch, the overwhelming sensation of her. The dusty, forgotten storage unit became their universe, filled only with the sound of their breathing, the thrum of her energy, and the blinding light of their connection. The flimsy insulation foam became their bed, the discarded cloak a tangled sheet. Joran shed his shirt, Lyra her concealing cloak, revealing the full mesmerizing beauty of her form in the dim, pulsating light radiating from her own skin. Touching her was an exploration of textures and temperatures, the impossible smoothness of her scaled torso, the surprising warmth gathering at her core, the cool, flexible fins along her arms, the slight electric tingle that accompanied every brush of his fingers. She explored him with equal intensity, her touches clinical yet intensely sensual. Her fingers traced his muscles, the lines of old scars, the hair on his chest, her lights flaring with curiosity and fascination at the differences between their bodies. Rough, warm, solid, her thoughts brushed against his mind, interspersed with waves of pure, uncomplicated pleasure. Their kisses became deeper, more demanding, tongues exploring, tasting, sharing breath and energy. He discovered the sensitive ridges behind her delicate ear fins, eliciting shivers and soft, crystalline cries. She found the spot just below his ribs that made him gasp, her cool fingers pressing lightly, sending jolts of fire through his system. When their bodies finally joined, it was less a collision and more a merging. Her internal heat enveloped him, startlingly intense, and the thrumming vibration focused, becoming a powerful, rhythmic pulse that seemed to sync their heartbeats, their breaths. It felt like sinking into pure energy, overwhelming his senses. Lights exploded behind his eyelids, mirroring the dazzling display playing across her skin, gold, crimson, emerald, violet swirling and shifting with every movement, every shared gasp. She moved with an innate grace, her serpentine lower body coiling around his hips, holding him tight, her tail brushing rhythmically against his back. Her pleasure was palpable, radiating outwards in waves of warmth and light, washing over him, fueling his own. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional, telepathic. He felt echoes of her sensations, flashes of her perception, the taste of his skin, the sound of his heartbeat amplified, the feeling of his energy merging with hers. It was profoundly intimate, stripping away layers he hadn't even known he possessed. Connect. Deeper. One, her thoughts urged, frantic and needy. He met her intensity, losing himself in the rhythm, in the light, in the overwhelming sensation of her. He clutched her shoulders, fingers digging slightly into the smooth scales, anchoring himself as waves of pleasure crashed over him. She cried out, a high, clear note that resonated in the small space, her body arching against his, lights flaring supernova bright. His own release followed, a raw groan torn from his throat as sensation overwhelmed him, dissolving thought, leaving only pure feeling. They collapsed together, trembling, breathless, slick with sweat, and the faint, conductive moisture her skin seemed to exude under intense emotion. Her lights slowly subsided, dimming to a soft, steady amber glow that pulsed in time with her slowing breaths. Her head rested on his chest, the delicate fins on her forearms fluttering against his skin. He stroked her back, feeling the intricate pattern of her scales under his palm. Silence wasn't empty. It hummed with the residual energy of their joining, thick with unspoken emotion and the lingering scent of ozone and arousal. He felt drained yet strangely energized, raw, exposed, but not afraid, not anymore. Lyra shifted, lifting her head to look at him. Her golden eyes were soft, luminous. A slow, genuine smile touched her lips. Good. The thought was simple content wrapped in a warmth that seeped into his bones. He managed a weak smile back. Yeah, he breathed. Good. She nuzzled against his chest, emitting a soft, purring thrum. Bonded. The word landed gently in his mind, almost casually. Bonded, he froze. Oh crap. What did bonded mean to a Cathar? He had a sudden, terrifying image of lifelong mating rituals, psychic links he couldn't turn off, and maybe weird alien space bobbies. The comfortable afterglow evaporated, replaced by a familiar flicker of panic. He hadn't just had sex with an alien. He'd apparently signed up for something far more permanent, and he had absolutely no idea what he'd gotten himself into. Panic clawed at Joran's throat. Bonded. The word echoed, heavy with implications he couldn't begin to fathom. He tried to subtly pull back, needing space to think, but Lyra just snuggled closer, her tail giving a contented flick against his calf. Her lights pulsed a soft, sleepy gold. She felt completely relaxed, utterly secure. He felt like he was free-falling without a parachute. Lyra, he managed, trying to keep his voice steady. About that bonded thing. She tilted her head back, looking up at him through thick, dark lashes he hadn't noticed before. Her golden eyes were hazy with satisfaction. Yes, bonded, you feel it, the connection. Stronger now, stronger. He felt it all right, like a high-voltage cable had been permanently fused to his soul. Yeah, I feel something, he admitted carefully. But what exactly does bonded entail for your people? Her brow furrowed slightly, a ripple of confusion disturbing the serene gold light. Entail, it is we are connected, resonance aligned, shared path. She nuzzled his chest again, a gesture clearly meant to be reassuring. It was. Shared path like we travel together, or shared path like forever. He knew he sounded panicked. He couldn't help it. Forever was a long damn time, especially with someone you'd known for, 3 cycles? Someone who communicated through glowy skin and psychic vibes. Lyra pushed herself up slightly, resting on her elbows, her expression shifting from sleepy contentment to concerned scrutiny. Her lights flickered with questioning blues and greens. Forever is flow, not stone, but the bond endures, strengthens. Why does Joran sound spiky, afraid? Because forever is a big word, he snapped, then instantly regretted his tone. He saw a flicker of hurt in her eyes, the lights dimming momentarily. He took a breath. Look, Lyra, humans. We don't really do bonded like that. Not usually, especially not after, well, not this fast. Her confusion deepened fast. The resonance was clear from the start. In your ship, felt you, needed connection, grounding, you offered. I offered comfort, he protested weakly. And maybe a place to hide. I didn't offer eternal psychic space marriage. Lyra recoiled as if struck, pulling away from him completely, her movement sharp and sudden. The warm glow vanished, replaced by flickering static, angry reds pulsing beneath the surface. The air grew cold. You regret the connection, sharing resonance. Her voice when she spoke aloud was tight, laced with a pain that cut deeper than anger. No, I mean it was intense, good, really good. He reached for her, but she flinched away, pulling the discarded cloak around her shoulders like armor. But bonded implies expectations, rules, things I don't understand. The only rule is connection, she said, her voice low, vibrating with hurt, to share, to protect, to be. She looked at him, her golden eyes shimmering, not with tears, he wasn't sure Cathar cried, but with a profound, aching sadness. You feel the bond, I know you do, but you fight it. Why? Is loneliness better than connection? Her question hit him squarely, deflating his panic, leaving behind a hollow ache. Was it? He'd guarded his solitude fiercely, using sarcasm and distance as shields. He told himself he preferred it this way, less complicated, safer, but Lyra saw right through it. She felt his leaks, his buried sparks, his deep-seated loneliness. And despite his fear, despite the overwhelming alienness of it all, the connection he felt with her was undeniable, real, powerful, more real than anything he'd felt in years. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I don't know how to do this, Lyra. Connection. Bonding. Especially when everything is trying to kill us. He gestured vaguely towards the door, indicating the hostile station outside, the KRL hunters. We protect each other, she said, the red light softening slightly, shifting towards determined violet. The bond makes us stronger, together. She watched him, waiting. The choice hung heavy in the air. Push her away, reinforce his lonely walls, and maybe survive. Or accept this terrifying, exhilarating connection, embrace the bonded status, whatever it truly meant, and face the danger together. He looked at her, truly looked at her. At the proud lift of her head, the vulnerability in her eyes, the steady pulse of light that seemed tied to his own heartbeat now. He thought of the KRL, of the cold emptiness she was running from. He thought of the jolt of warmth when she'd first touched his hand, the fierce protectiveness he'd felt pulling her through the panicked crowd. Loneliness wasn't better, it was just emptier. Okay, he said softly. Okay, bonded. He didn't fully understand it. It scared the hell out of him, but he wouldn't fight it anymore. Lyra's breath hitched. A slow wave of warm golden light washed over her skin, chasing away the last vestiges of red and violet. Tentatively, she reached out a hand. Together. He met her touch, lacing his fingers through hers. The connection flared, warm and steady. Together. Accepting the bond didn't magically solve their problems. They were still trapped in a grimy storage unit on a hostile station with KRL potentially lurking around every corner. But something had shifted. The fear was still present, but it wasn't isolating anymore. It was shared. Joran found himself instinctively protective, constantly scanning the corridor outside their flimsy door, planning escape routes. Lyra, in turn, seemed to draw strength from the connection, her earlier anxiety replaced by a focused calm. Her lights maintained a steady, watchful blue-green glow. They worked together, pooling their knowledge. Lyra used her sensitivity to energy fields to scan the station's network through the thin walls, searching for KRL activity patterns, while Joran cross-referenced her findings with his battered datapad, mapping potential blind spots in surveillance and patrol routes. They're concentrating searches near the main docking bays, Lyra murmured, eyes closed, one hand pressed against the vibrating wall. Faint ripples of light pulsed from her fingertips into the metal, feeling systematic sweeps, looking for energy signatures. Hours. Joran traced a route on the schematic. Okay, if we avoid the primary levels, use the old service conduits, maybe we can reach the decommissioned freight elevators on sublevel 4. There's an emergency access hatch there that leads out to the asteroid's surface, near the old mining exhaust vents. Lyra opened her eyes, nodding, risky, exposed. More exposed than staying here waiting for them to kick down the door, he countered. She conceded the point with a slight dip of her head. The bond it helps mask our resonance. Slightly, he frowned. You think how shared field, blended signature, less distinct. She touched her chest, then gestured towards him, like smoothing ripples on water. It was a sliver of hope. Maybe this weird psychic connection had practical applications beyond making him feel simultaneously terrified and elated. They spent the next few hours gathering their meager supplies, preparing. The banter returned, but gentler now, underscored by the new intimacy. He caught her trying to mimic his sarcastic tone when commenting on a faulty water pack, the result endearingly awkward. He found himself explaining the concept of a lucky charm when she examined a small, polished river stone he kept tucked in his pocket. Memory? Connection to water place? She'd asked, her lights soft with curiosity. Something like that, he'd admitted, surprised at his own willingness to share the small piece of his past. As dusk fell on Port Nowhere, marked only by the dimming of the main concourse lights filtering through the cracks, they made their move. Moving through the service tunnels was slow, cramped, and filthy. Joran led the way, relying on his knowledge of station layouts, while Lyra followed closely, her soft glow providing just enough light to see, her senses alert for any approaching energy signatures. Twice, they had to flatten themselves into grimy alcoves as KR patrols passed nearby, their heavy footsteps echoing ominously. Each time, Joran felt Lyra's fear brush against his, but also her fierce determination. She'd press her hand against his back, projecting reassurance. Safe, hidden. He found himself drawing strength from her calm, his own racing pulse slowing. They reached the decommissioned elevator shaft. Rusting cables hung like dead vines, the air thick with the smell of decay. Joran located the emergency ladder integrated into the shaft wall. This is it, he whispered. Up we go, stay alert. The climb was arduous. Rungs were missing, coated in slippery grime. Joran went first, testing each step, Lyra following silently below, her light a small beacon in the oppressive darkness. As they neared sublevel 4, Lyra suddenly stiffened. Wait, he froze, clinging to the ladder. Energy surge, close. Heavy bootsteps echoed from the level above them. A harsh beam of light stabbed down the elevator shaft, sweeping back and forth. KR, they were checking the shaft. Joran's blood ran cold. They were trapped, exposed on the ladder. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Lyra pressed herself flat against the ladder beneath him, extinguishing her light completely, plunging them into absolute darkness. He could feel her terror, sharp and cold, but underneath it something else. A gathering of energy. Hold tight, Joran, her thought was suddenly fierce, focused. Trust the bond. Before he could question, he felt it, a wave of pure energy surging from her, flowing up the ladder through him. It wasn't unpleasant, felt like static charge mixed with warmth, but it was powerful. It flowed past him, hitting the shaft walls above. Simultaneously, she projected a confusing jumble of sensory data upwards, the echo of dripping water, the skittering of unseen rodents, the background hum of distant machinery, a manufactured illusion of emptiness. The KR flashlight beam swept past their position, paused, swept back. Joran held his breath, muscles screaming from clinging to the ladder. Then, after an agonizing moment, the light moved on, the footsteps receding. Silence returned. Joran sagged against the ladder, relief washing over him in a dizzying wave. He felt drained, as if Lyra had borrowed some of his own energy for her illusion. Below him, Lyra's light flickered back on, soft and weak. She was trembling. It worked, she projected, relief mingling with exhaustion. He looked down into the faint glow illuminating her face, seeing the strain, the vulnerability. She protected them. Used the bond, used him as a conduit. He reached down, finding her hand in the darkness, squeezing it tightly. You were incredible, he whispered. We were, she corrected softly, her fingers curling around his, together. And in the darkness of the elevator shaft, clinging to life, the word bonded didn't seem quite so terrifying anymore. It felt like survival. Reaching the emergency hatch felt like breaching the surface after drowning. Joran forced the rusted locking mechanism, grunting with effort, until it finally gave way with a screech of tortured metal. Cold, thin air smelling of vacuum and metallic dust hit them. Outside was the surface of the asteroid Port Nowhere was built into, a landscape of pitted gray rock. shadowed craters, and the skeletal remains of old mining equipment, all under the cold gaze of distant stars. The main station sprawled further along the curve of the moonlit, a garish cluster of lights pollution against the void. Far below, nestled in a shadowed ravine Joran knew from old smuggler's charts, was where the rusty bolt should be waiting, moved by the bribed attendant. Okay, Joran breathed, scanning the desolate landscape. Downhill from here, mostly. Lyra stepped out beside him, pulling the cloak tighter against the chill vacuum-kissed air. Even without a breathable atmosphere, the temperature drop was noticeable. Her lights pulsed faintly, reacting to the vast emptiness. Open, cold, quiet. Yeah, well, quiet is good right now. He pointed towards the ravine. Ship down there, about a click rough terrain. Can you manage? She nodded, her tail giving a determined flick. Can manage. The trek was treacherous. Loose rocks shifted underfoot and deep shadows concealed potential pitfalls. They moved carefully, Joran using a small handlight, Lyra relying on her own senses and the faint starlight. The silence was profound, broken only by the crunch of their boots on the regolith and their own breathing inside Joran's helmet. He jury-rigged a simple rebreather mask for Lyra using spare parts, hoping it would be enough for the short exposure. Despite the danger, a strange sense of peace settled over Joran. Away from the oppressive closeness of the station, under the vastness of space, the bond with Lyra felt less like a trap and more like an anchor. He could feel her presence beside him, a steady warmth against the cold, a silent awareness that was surprisingly comforting. He glanced at her, her cloaked figure moving with silent grace over the uneven ground, the faint glow beneath the fabric outlining her form. She caught his gaze, her golden eyes luminous even through the rebreather mask. A soft pulse of affection, warm and clear, flowed from her to him. He felt his own guarded heart respond, a warmth spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with his suit heaters. He offered a small smile visible even through his visor. She mirrored the expression, a slight upward curve of her lips visible behind the mask. They reached the lip of the ravine. Below, tucked into the deepest shadows, was the unmistakable, battered silhouette of the rusty bolt. Relief washed over Joran so strongly his knees almost buckled. There she is, he breathed. But as they started the final descent, a flicker of movement caught Lyra's attention. She stopped dead, her hand shooting out to grab Joran's arm. Weight, energy signature, KRL near the ship. Joran peered into the darkness, heart sinking. She was right. Two figures, clad in the same dark gray suits, were circling the rusty bolt, running scanners over its hull. They hadn't found a way in yet, but they were here. Eating ambush, frag, Joran hissed. They must have tracked the ship's transponder signature when the attendant moved it. They were exposed, silhouetted against the starlit sky on the ravine edge. If the KRL looked up, Lyra tugged his arm, pulling him back behind a large boulder. They sense resonance. Close proximity alerts them. Her lights flickered nervously. They know what they are looking for. Great. So walking up and asking them nicely to leave is out. Joran frantically scanned their surroundings. Rocks, shadows, a sheer drop on one side. No cover between them and the ship. They couldn't fight two armed KRL head-on. They needed a distraction, an idea sparked, reckless and probably stupid. Perfect. Okay, he whispered, turning to Lyra. Remember how you used me as a conduit in the shaft? Can you project something bigger, louder? Lyra frowned, lights pulsing uncertainly. Project what? An illusion needs focus. Energy. Not an illusion, raw energy, like a power surge. Over there. He pointed towards a cluster of derelict mining machinery further down the ravine, away from the ship. Make them think something overloaded, draw them away from the ship. Lyra stared at the machinery, then back at him. Drain energy. From you. From bond. Risky. Could attract more attention. Riskier than letting them board the ship with us inside, he countered. We need maybe 30 seconds, long enough for me to get to the ramp controls. She hesitated, then nodded slowly, determination hardening her expression. The familiar blue-green glow intensified around her. We'll try, connect, focus. She placed her hands on his shoulders, her masked face close to his helmet visor. He felt the connection deepen, the thrumming vibration return, stronger this time. Ready? He gripped the edge of the boulder, ready to move the second they looked away. Do it. Lyra closed her eyes. He felt the draw, a sudden leeching coolness spreading through him as she pulled on their shared energy, gathering it, focusing it. The air around her crackled, her lights flaring intensely beneath the cloak. Then, with a silent scream of focused will, she pushed. A brilliant flash of white light erupted near the old mining equipment, accompanied by a psychic shockwave that Joran felt even through his helmet, a blast of raw, chaotic energy. The two KRL figures near the rusty bolt instantly whirled towards the disturbance, weapons raised, startled by the unexpected surge. "Now!" Joran hissed, breaking from cover and sprinting down the rocky slope towards his ship, legs pumping, lungs burning. He didn't look back. He just ran, praying Lyra's desperate gamble had bought them enough time.